This happened a few months ago. I had just moved to a quiet suburb after college. I wanted to save some money, so I took a job babysitting for a family down the street. The house was perfect and felt completely normal. It looked like something out of a magazine. I thought it would be easy. Just watch the kids and make a little extra cash. The first night went without a hitch. I got the kids to bed easily. After they were asleep, I was settling in on the couch with some snacks. It was peaceful until I heard a faint tapping sound from the playroom. I figured it was just the house settling. I shrugged it off. I was there to relax. The next night was when things started to get strange. That tapping sound was back, but louder. I went to check on the kids again. They were sound asleep. When I entered the playroom, I noticed the toys were all in different places. I had arranged them before bedtime. I felt uneasy as I checked the room. Maybe I just forgot how I left them. I even laughed a bit, trying to ease my nerves. But deep down, that voice in my head reminded me something wasn't right. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The pressure in the room grew heavier. I felt someone watching me while I put the kids to bed. I don't know how to explain it. My skin prickled as I tucked them in. The shadows on the walls twisted unnaturally. No, that was just my imagination, I told myself. I tried to focus on the kids, fresh and innocent, but I couldn't shake the feeling. That evening I attempted to calm myself down by flipping through channels. Nothing caught my interest. Then, that tapping returned, louder than before. My heart raced. I glanced at the playroom again, and it felt darker, more menacing. I stood up to turn on a light, but froze when I heard it again. It felt alive. I swore I saw something dart past the doorway. I didn't want to think about what that could mean. What if the family was hiding something? I shook my head to try to get rid of those thoughts. I just needed to keep it together. But part of me was convinced this place was haunted. Or worse, I was losing my mind. I barely survived that third night. The tapping was chaotic now. Then I thought I heard a voice. Soft, calling my name. I turned around quickly, but nobody was there. My heart sank. I rushed to check on the kids. They were still asleep, peaceful. But I couldn't shake the dread coursing through me. I felt as if the house itself was alive, breathing around me. I wanted to run, but I felt stuck. Then, as I turned back to the playroom, the tapping stopped completely. It was quiet. That's when I felt the chill creeping up my spine. I still don't know if it was the house or something else. Just standing there, I felt the weight of whatever it was. I couldn't move, waiting to see what would happen next. I stood there, frozen, staring at the playroom door. The silence was deafening. My mind raced. I needed to know what was happening. After a moment, I gathered the courage and stepped forward, but a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. I jumped, my heart racing all over again. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. Maybe it was just the fridge or a cabinet. Still, something deep inside told me to be careful. I tiptoed toward the kitchen, each step heavier than the last. As I got closer, I realized the crash had happened by the back door. It was slightly ajar, swinging gently as if inviting me in. I hesitated, my hands trembling at my sides. Surely the kids wouldn't have gone out. But then again, they were sleeping soundly, and I was desperate to find a logical explanation for this nightmare. I stepped into the kitchen, the cool air sending a chill through me. I glanced around, searching for any sign of activity. That was when I noticed it. A small drawing on the fridge, made with a colorful marker. It had several stick figures with wide, beaming smiles. The caption read, "We love playing with our friends." My stomach dropped. I didn't know why, but it made the hairs on my neck stand up. It felt wrong. I felt it again, like someone was watching, lurking just behind me. I quickly tore my gaze away from the drawing and turned to shut the back door. As soon as I pulled it closed, the tapping began again, this time coming from inside the house. My heart raced, and I felt panic rising. I took a step back, and there it was again. A soft voice. It called out my name, sweet yet unsettling. I spun around. "Hello?" I called faintly, fear tightening my chest. Silence followed. Then the tapping grew louder. It sounded impatient, like a child wanting attention. My pulse quickened, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I needed a plan. I couldn't let whatever this was control me. My instincts told me to leave, but I couldn't abandon the kids. I had to keep them safe. I made my way back to the playroom, determined to check on them one last time before taking action. But as I stepped inside, the lights flickered. I felt dizzy for a moment. Shadows danced on the walls, and I could swear the toys were shifting around. I blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of it. Then I noticed something on the floor. A doll I hadn't seen before. It was gazing up at me with hollow, dark eyes, its mouth set in a slight grin. My heart sank. Just as I bent down to pick it up, all the lights went out. Darkness slithered through the room, thick and suffocating. I fumbled for my phone, needing a light, but it was dead. That's when I heard it, a soft giggle coming from the corner of the room. My breath hitched in my throat. I was no longer alone. Then everything really went dark. I could feel the weight of darkness pressing in around me. It was pitch black, the kind of darkness that felt alive. My heart raced as I stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. The giggle echoed again, this time closer, sending a chill down my spine. I glanced around wildly, but I couldn't see a thing. Instinct took over. I turned on my heel and stumbled toward the door. My hands fumbled against the edge of the wall, trying to guide me. I had to get out of the playroom. I needed light, any light. Then, just as I reached for the doorknob, the giggle dropped to a whisper. "Come play with us." I whipped around, my breath catching. There was no one there. I hesitated, my mind racing. I couldn't let this thing draw me in. I forced myself to keep moving. I yanked the door open and stepped back into the kitchen. As I crossed the threshold, the lights flickered back on, momentarily blinding me. But instead of calm, terror bubbled inside me. The kitchen was no longer empty. I was surrounded by the toys from the playroom, dolls, action figures, and a teddy bear I hadn't even noticed until now. They were strewn across the floor, like they had jumped out of the playroom and into the living space. I swallowed hard, piecing together the chaos. I moved to the dining table, trying to breathe through the panic. Suddenly, I caught sight of the doll I had seen in the playroom. It was positioned upright at the head of the table, its hollow eyes staring straight at me. The grin was now wider, almost mocking. "Stop it!" I shouted, feeling ridiculous for screaming at a doll. "This isn't funny." But deep down, I questioned if it was a joke or something far worse. My phone. I spun around, hoping that maybe the light of the screen would stave off whatever was happening. I dug in my pocket, my fingers numb. I couldn't believe I had forgotten to charge it. Now I was truly in the dark. Then I heard it again, the swift sound of footsteps coming from the stairs. My heart sank. The kids. I darted to the living room, but as soon as I rounded the corner, a shattering sound erupted from upstairs. Glass breaking like a picture frame was thrown against the wall. Panic surged through me, and without thinking, I darted toward the staircase. "Sam! Lily!" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence answered me. I climbed the first step, but my body felt heavy, weighed down by fear. The darkness from the playroom hung over me, a ghostly reminder of the chaos I just left behind. Were they okay? I couldn't bear the thought of not knowing. As I reached the top of the staircase, I peered down the hall. The door to their room stood ajar, the light from the nightstand spilling out into the hallway. A sense of urgency propelled me forward. I rushed to the door, ready to burst inside, but just before I pushed it open, a muffled giggle came from within. The kind of giggle that chilled my blood. I hesitated, hand poised over the doorknob. What was happening? That's when I saw it. In the dim light, a shadow shifted in front of me. Someone was in the room with them. I held my breath, staring at the door as the giggle rang out again, echoing through the hallway. The shadow moved closer to the edge of the light, teasing my imagination. My heart pounded against my ribcage, each beat urging me to either run away or confront whatever was happening. "Sam! Lily!" I shouted again, louder this time, hoping to break whatever spell had enveloped the room. I needed to know they were safe. As soon as the words left my mouth, the shadow froze. Then a soft whisper floated back to me, the voice eerily familiar. "We're playing, Mommy." Mommy? My blood ran cold. The kids had never called me that. Panic turned my legs to jelly. I placed my hand on the doorknob, feeling the chill of the metal. Should I really go in? What if it wasn't them? I hesitated for a moment longer, then twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The sight inside made my heart drop. The room was a wreck. Every toy from the playroom was scattered across the floor, as if a wild party had just ended. And there, in the middle of the chaos, were two figures. I recognized their faces instantly, though they seemed off. Sam and Lily stood with their backs to me, giggling and whispering among themselves. The way they moved felt strange, almost puppet-like. I called out again, "What are you doing? Are you okay?" They turned around slowly. Their eyes were wide, but there was an odd spark in them, a glimmer that I couldn't understand. "We're playing with our new friends," Sam said, pointing toward the corner of the room. I followed his gaze, and my heart sank. In the shadows were more figures that looked like children. But there was something wrong. They were too still, too quiet, their eyes reflecting the glimmer from the nightstand lamp, making them look almost ethereal. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice cracking. "They want us to join," Lily replied, her smile widening, but her eyes remained distant, disconnected. Panic surged again. I needed to get them out of here. "We have to go, right now." I stepped into the room, trying to muster some authority, but my words felt weak against the growing darkness. Just then, the air thickened around us. I felt a presence loom in the corner, something sinister swirling in the edges of the light. The room went cold, and the giggling grew louder, overwhelming. The new figures moved forward, their faces becoming vague and twisted. "Stay with us," they whispered in unison, their voices blending together into a haunting melody. "Sam, Lily, come with me." I reached for them, but just as my hands brushed against their shoulders, they turned back toward the figures, entranced. "No, Mommy, we want to play." Desperation filled me. "You don't understand. They're not friends. We have to leave." I almost cried, but the words were meaningless. Before I could react, one of the dark figures stepped closer. It was taller, looming over the children, its face indistinct but menacing. I felt the dread wrap around my heart like a vice, and then everything went dark. I stumbled forward, but the darkness swallowed everything. My hands flailed through the air, searching for something to hold on to as I struggled to regain my bearings. It felt like an eternity, suspended in that inky void. All around me was silence. Not the calm kind, but the kind that pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the dark lifted. I blinked, back in the playroom, but it wasn't the same. The shadows had deepened, swirling along the walls like living things. The room was hauntingly silent, the giggles and whispers gone, replaced by an unsettling stillness. "Sam? Lily?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. I scanned the room, but the children were no longer in sight. The chaos of toys lay scattered, yet it felt completely deserted. I took a hesitant step back, glancing at the corner where the sinister figures had stood. They were gone, but I felt their presence, like a weight pressing on the air around me. There was no comfort here, only a feeling that something had changed. A soft giggle echoed from another part of the house, making my blood run cold. I instinctively turned toward the source of the sound, my heart racing. "Sam! Lily!" I shouted again, feeling the panic rise. The giggle repeated, this time accompanied by a child's voice. "Come play with us!" I swallowed hard. The voice was familiar, and yet it set my nerves on fire. It sounded just like Lily, laced with insidious cheerfulness. I hesitated at the door, torn between going toward the sound or running away. Steeling myself, I pushed open the door to the hallway, heart pounding. The house felt different, darker, as if the walls were leaning in, eavesdropping. The playful echoes seemed to lead me further down the hall, toward the living room. As I walked, I heard another sound, a dragging noise, low and scraping. I crept forward, every instinct screaming at me to turn back, but I couldn't abandon the kids. I had to find them. The living room door stood ajar, a sliver of light slicing through the dark. I edged closer and peeked inside. What I saw made my stomach drop. Sam and Lily were sitting on the floor, but they were no longer alone. The figures stood around them, their backs toward me, a circle of shadowy shapes bending down, as if listening to my children. "Please, what are you doing?" I said, my voice trembling. Sam and Lily didn't respond. They were fixated on whatever the figures were saying, mesmerized. Suddenly, one of the shadows turned, its head tilting in my direction. "Stay," it whispered. And at that moment, I could see its face, a distorted mimicry of a child's grin. With every ounce of courage I had left, I stumbled back into the hallway, the fear tightening around my throat. I was paralyzed. What was I supposed to do? Then I remembered. The box. The box from the attic that I had looked through earlier. I had seen something in there, something that might help me understand what was happening. I dashed back to the stairs, urgency propelling me forward. The giggles echoed behind me, mingling with the whispers. "Come back. We want to play with you." I raced up the stairs, each step heavy with dread, wishing I could shake the feeling that I was being hunted. I had to reach that box before the game took a darker turn. I burst into the attic, breathless, heart racing. The air felt thick and stale. Dust motes swirled in the narrow beam of light from the small window. I hurried to the corner where I'd seen the box. My hands fumbled as I pulled it from the stacks of forgotten toys and clothes. When I opened the lid, the smell of old paper hit me. I rifled through the contents, a jumble of faded photographs, old letters, and a few forgotten trinkets. Nothing seemed to connect until I found a tattered book at the bottom. Its spine was cracked, but the cover bore a strange insignia, like a twisted spiral. My heart sank as I recognized it, a symbol I had seen in the playroom. I flipped through the pages frantically. The illustrations were unsettling. Children playing with shadowy figures, their faces twisted into cheerful grins that made my skin crawl. As I read the captions, chills ran down my spine. Each line was an invitation to join, to play. My hands shook as I turned the pages, a familiar phrase catching my eye. "They will always want you back." That's when I noticed the last page. It showed a family gathered around a table with a shadow looming behind them. Beneath the illustration, it read, "Some games are forever." A sudden crash echoed from downstairs, jolting me from the book's grip. My pulse raced even faster. What was happening? Had they found a way out? I couldn't stay here. My instinct screamed at me to go back to the living room, but fear gripped me tight. I shoved the book back into the box, making a split-second decision. Whatever was happening, I needed to confront it head-on. I took a deep breath as I descended the stairs, each creaky step echoing in the silence that filled the house. As I approached the living room, whispers coiled around me, calling my name. "Sarah, come play." I hesitated at the door, heart pounding. My own name, twisted by those cheerful voices, echoed in my ears, filling me with dread. Then I remembered the box's warning. "Some games are forever." The idea of the children being trapped sent a wave of urgency crashing over me. Without thinking, I flung open the door. The living room was dimly lit, the shadows heavier than before. Sam and Lily were still on the floor, but now their eyes were glazed over, staring at a dark cloud that swirled above them, whispering secrets in low, twisted tones. The figures had formed a wall around them, their forms lurching and shifting like smoke. "Get away from them!" I shouted, forcing my voice to rise above the whispers. The shadows turned to me, their eyes glinting with curiosity, as if I had interrupted a show that they wanted to continue. "Playtime is not over," one of them said slowly, a sound like rusted metal scraping together. "Let them go!" I yelled, rage and fear intertwining. I could see the fear etched on their little faces beneath their trance, and it fueled my urgency. I needed to act. An unnatural wind swept through the room, tugging at my clothes, swirling the dust around me. With the figure's attention locked on me, I took a step forward. "I know what you are. You can't keep them." Then the atmosphere shifted. A tension filled the air, and I felt the walls closing in. I had pushed them too far, and as the shadows began to move toward me, their forms blending into a shape that felt suffocatingly familiar, I knew then that this was a game that could change everything. Suddenly, the lights flickered. I glanced towards the window, and that's when I saw it. something in the darkness outside, watching. I realized that I was not just fighting for the kids. I was fighting for my own sanity. The shadows lunged, their movements swift and chaotic. I stumbled back, suddenly aware that I had crossed a line I shouldn't have. But I couldn't just stand there. "Let them go!" I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. The swirling cloud hesitated, as if considering my words. Sam and Lily remained oblivious, caught in some macabre dream. My heart pounded harder, fighting against the sense of helplessness. I had to reach them somehow. That's when I felt it. A tug at my sleeve. I turned to see a small, familiar face peering through the mass of shadows. Lily. Her mouth moved, but no sound escaped. I rushed toward her, pushing my way through the cold, swirling darkness that pressed against me like a dense fog. "Lily!" I shouted, but she didn't react. I could feel panic rising as I grasped her shoulders. Her eyes, usually bright, looked vacant and distant. A low hum began to vibrate through the air, growing louder with each heartbeat of the room. Suddenly, the dark figures shifted, and the voices resumed, louder, more insistent. "Join us. Play with us." They spoke in unison, a symphony of temptation laced with malice. The room felt alive, pulsating with their twisted energy. I took a deep breath, honing in on the power of my own voice. "You can't keep them!" I shouted again. "You're not their friends!" There was a moment, a flicker of silence that hung in the air like a broken string. The figures paused, caught off guard by the defiance in my tone. That was my opening. With every ounce of courage I had, I pulled Lily to me and turned to Sam. His eyes, too, were glazed, and I couldn't let him slip into oblivion. "No! Come back!" I shouted, fury mixing with desperation. I grasped Sam's hand. "You have to wake up!" In that instant, a flash of light burst through the room, slicing through the shadows. I blinked, momentarily blinded, but the shadows hissed and recoiled like ants from fire. The warmth enveloped me, pushing against the cold. Then it all changed. The room pitched and spun as everything went dark, the light extinguished as quickly as it had come. Heart racing, I pressed forward, pulling both kids with me. But as I did, I felt a sudden weight pushing back, wrapping around my legs. I stumbled. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of laughter and cries. "You'll never leave. You belong to us now." I fought against the grasping fingers of darkness. My heart thrummed wildly, but I couldn't yield. "No, we leave together." Then, in the distance, I spotted it, the same symbol from the attic book, glowing faintly on the wall behind the figures. I shoved through the thick air, pulling Sam and Lily as close as possible. We were running out of time. I had to break the hold the shadows had over them, but how? I had no answers, no plan in place. I felt like I was flailing in a storm with no end in sight. But a sudden thought came to me, clearer than the chaos surrounding us. I had to use the very thing that drew them in. "Lily, Sam, remember your home. Remember the games we play, the fun we have." Even in the dark, I could see a flicker of recognition ignite in their eyes. "Home," Lily murmured softly. The shadows around us faltered, wavering uncertainly. I seized the moment and shouted, "We choose to leave. We choose to play our own games." In that instant, a bright flash surged through the room. The children blinked at me, clarity breaking through their haze, appearing to wake up from a nightmare. But it wasn't over. The swirling darkness began to pulse with rage. "Do not torment us with escape," a shadow hissed, looming closer. Then everything went cold, and I realized I wasn't just fighting the shadows anymore. Something else was watching from that darkness outside, waiting for the moment to strike. I held on tightly to both kids, feeling the cold grip of shadows trying to pull us back. The darkness around us crackled with anger. I could barely focus, but I knew I couldn't stop now. Not when they were finally breaking through. Suddenly, I felt a pull at my feet again, stronger this time. The whispers grew frantic, swirling around us like a storm. "You can't resist forever," they taunted, echoing my own fears back at me. I could feel dread creeping in at the edges of my mind. "No! We're stronger than you!" I yelled, willing my voice to drown out theirs. I refused to let them win. Even so, I felt Sam's hand slip slightly as the darkness tugged at him. I tightened my grip, forcing my way toward the glowing symbol on the wall. I had to believe it could save us. "Remember the park?" I urged, my voice hoarse but steady. "The swings? The laughter? We're going home to that." Lily's eyes brightened further, but Sam's face still looked lost. "Sam, please, fight. Think of the last day of school," I pressed. "We're going to celebrate." That seemed to spark something in him. His expression shifted, that familiar spark flickering back. "Home?" he whispered, his voice pained. "Yes! Remember home!" I could see the shadows swirling wildly around us, frantic at the thought of our escape. They were losing control. A low growl filled the air, causing the walls to seem to shudder. I could run to the symbol now. I felt it pulling me too, a beacon of hope. We dashed forward, hearts pounding, but with each step, the darkness lashed out with more aggression. Suddenly, a darkness broke away from the rest and surged toward us. A figure formed in the void. It was bigger, and I could make out its twisted face as it howled in rage. "You will not leave!" it screamed, a voice that sent shivers down my spine. "Run!" I shouted, pushing Lily and Sam ahead of me. I had to protect them. Not knowing what else to do, I grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the figure. The impact seemed to shock it, but it quickly recovered, growing larger, each shadowy tendril reaching out. Then I noticed something. There was a crack in the wall near the symbol, pulsating with energy. "This way! Help me!" I yelled desperately as I shoved Sam and Lily with all my might toward it. They stumbled, but I could see the life returning to them. The figure lunged, but I stood between it and the kids. "Go!" I screamed. "Now!" Against every instinct, I took a step back and leaned into the pressure of the shadows, as if to buy them just a moment. For the first time, I felt panic. Then I heard Lily call out, "We'll find you!" Their words knocked the breath from my chest. I wanted to scream at them to not look back, to go. But as they dashed away, the shadows clawed at me, hungry. I turned to face the rushing dark, adrenaline surging through my veins. I wasn't done yet. I would fight. But suddenly, the room trembled beneath me, and the crack in the wall widened, revealing what lay beyond, a glimpse of swirling colors, light piercing through the growing shadows. I felt a terrifying pull, and everything around me blurred as the darkness threatened to consume me whole. That's when I realized there were other figures moving inside that sliver of light. They looked familiar, but before I could process it, everything went white. I was flung backward, landing hard on the unforgiving ground. Alone. And then silence. The shadows faded momentarily, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were still out there, biding their time. I had only just begun to uncover the truth of what haunted this house. And now, the fear of knowing left me breathless. I woke with a start, heat pooling in my chest as adrenaline surged through me. My surroundings were different, cracked tiles beneath me, and the air felt thick. I was back in the basement, but everything was strangely silent. For a moment, I thought I'd be glad for the quiet, but the stillness felt more suffocating than the shadows. "Lily! Sam!" I called out, but my voice sounded small and lost in the vastness of the space. Panic began to claw at me again. Had they made it through? Were they safe? I forced myself to take a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. I couldn't be overwhelmed now. Slowly, I got to my feet. Everything felt unsteady. I couldn't avoid the sliver of light I had seen before. It beckoned me. I approached it carefully, half expecting something to leap out of the shadows. Taking another step, I looked around. The walls leaned in, closing me off from any sense of direction. I had to find the kids. The thought guided my feet forward, inch by inch. I reached the crack in the wall, and the soft glow spilled into the dim room, casting long shadows behind me. As I peered inside, I felt dizzy. The swirling colors were mesmerizing, shifting from bright gold to deep blue. And within that chaos, shapes began to form. They flickered in and out, almost like memories just out of reach. I could feel an urge to follow them, to dive into the light. But I resisted. That's when I caught a glimpse of the familiar. There, the edges of Sam's silhouette and Lily's bright hair, their laughter echoing faintly. Relief washed over me, but before I could call to them, the shadows around me thickened. "No!" I shouted, but it twisted around my legs like a serpent, pulling me back. I spun around, terror clawing at my throat. "Let them go!" I yelled, but the shadows only laughed, a chorus of mocking voices. They belonged to us now. I felt hot tears spring to my eyes but forced them back. I couldn't give in. I remembered their faces, the way they smiled. "They're strong," I shouted at the darkness. "We're going to find each other." But as those words left my lips, the shadows surged. A second figure broke free, just as massive as the first, with eyes that glowed like embers. "You will be part of this darkness, or you will be lost," it hissed. I felt their pull, an insistence that tried to writhe its way into my mind. What if I couldn't fight them off? I glanced back at the crack, the light shrinking. I had to choose. With a renewed surge of determination, I grabbed the nearest object, a rusty pipe, and swung it blindly at the nearest figure. The metal struck home, and to my shock the creature staggered back, as if stung. The shadows writhed angrily, but I couldn't let myself stall. I raced back towards the light, feeling the heat on my back. There was one thing I knew for certain. If those kids were still alive, I'd find them. Just as I reached the crack, a piercing wail echoed through the darkness. It sent prickles down my spine and froze me in my tracks. I shifted, barely managing to stick my head through. And that's when I saw it. A small door nestled in the glowing wall, barely visible. "Who goes there?" a voice called from beyond the door, strained and haunting. My heart raced. "I'm coming!" I shouted, pushing with all my strength against the shadows. The darkness didn't want to let go, but I couldn't back down. I needed to know what lay beyond that door. I had to find Lily and Sam. I pressed the cold metal of the handle, bracing for whatever came next. As I yanked the door open, a blinding light enveloped me. The intensity was overwhelming, and I stumbled into the room, disoriented. I was met with a sudden wave of warmth, as if I had crossed a threshold into another world. I caught my breath, forcing my eyes to adjust to the brightness. I blinked several times, trying to make sense of my surroundings. I was in a playroom, but not the one from before. This space felt warm and inviting, filled with bright colors and laughter. The walls had cheerful murals painted on them, and the toys scattered across the floor were vibrant and safe. I glanced around frantically, searching for Sam and Lily. My heart raced as I called out, "Sam! Lily!" But the room echoed back only silence, and that sense of panic returned. Had I found an escape, only to lose them forever? Then I heard it, a soft giggle. I turned and found them sitting on a fluffy rug in the corner, their faces lit with joy. They were playing with a set of blocks, building a tower that reached precariously high. It was so ordinary, yet the sight made my heart swell with relief and confusion. How were they so blissfully unaware of everything we had just faced? "Mommy!" Lily squealed, her eyes sparkling with delight. The innocence in her voice pierced through the dread I had been carrying. "Look what we made!" "Mommy!" Sam echoed, grinning broadly. They looked just like they had before everything went dark. I rushed toward them, scooping them both up in my arms, holding them tightly. "I thought I lost you! I thought—" My voice cracked as I hugged them. Thoughts of the monsters and shadows flooded my brain, but I pushed them down, savoring this moment of clarity. "Where are we?" I finally asked, looking around at the bright room. "Playing! It's fun!" Sam exclaimed, his cheeks flushed, clearly enjoying whatever magic had wrapped around us. I forced a smile, but unease nibbled at the edges of my thoughts. It felt too easy. I gently set them down, scanning the bright room as if it might offer answers. "Are you happy here?" They nodded enthusiastically, returning to their tower building. But there was something in their gazes, a flicker of something darker beneath their joy, a thread of uncertainty that felt out of place in this cheerful oasis. And then I felt it. The pull, like a whisper at the back of my mind, curling around my thoughts. The giggles began to fade into echoes of that familiar dark laughter. I couldn't shake the chill that crept up my spine. "We have to go home," I murmured, the sense of a trap growing stronger. The laughter started to blend, forming a dissonant chorus that seemed to snicker at me from the edges of this perfect room. "Come play with us," it taunted, weaving along the walls like a melody. "Mommy?" Lily turned to me, her smile fading a notch as she sensed my distress. Can we stay? It feels nice. I hesitated, my heart racing. You were just with me in the dark. We need to leave. The shadows of my memory flooded back, those grotesque figures reaching for them, the desperate fight. But it's fun, Sam whined, clearly torn between staying and the loyalty to my plea. I gathered them in close again, whispering fiercely, "It isn't real. We have to fight back." The moment hung in the air like a fragile bubble, beautiful yet fleeting. Suddenly, the colors of the room darkened, shadows pooling at the corners, creeping toward us. The laughter shrieked back into the realm of chaos. And with that, I felt it. The urge to retreat to the familiar voices, the tormenting lure of safety. "No!" I shouted aloud, forcing my gaze forward. "Remember the swings! Remember home!" I cried again, eyes burning with desperate hope as I grabbed onto both of their little hands. "We can't let them take us!" The room rippled, a surge of pressure enveloping us, as the shadowy tendrils clawed at the edges of the light. I took a trembling step towards the door I had come through, dragging the children behind me. "We're leaving! All of us!" But the shadows surged forward, blocking my path with a wrathful force. I pulled the kids to me tightly, grounding myself as I felt their small forms shake with fear. "Join us, forever," one of the darker figures hissed, and the atmosphere grew ice-cold. "No!" I screamed into the chaos, shoving my way forward, steeling myself. "I won't let you take them." I surged ahead, powered by their presence beside me, their innocent faith in me urging me forward. Just then, the crack of light pulsed brighter, as if fortified by my resolve. "We're leaving now." As the darkness rushed toward me, I focused on the bright light at the edge of the door, hand grasping for the threshold. I felt certain that this door, this light, would bring us to safety. Suddenly the shadows converged, lashing out, and I felt a weight press against my chest. For a moment, I thought I might falter, but I remembered their laughter, their joy, the hope I had to hold on to. With one last desperate push, I threw open the door, stepping into the blinding light once more, pulling Sam and Lily with me. The world exploded in brightness, and then everything went dark. I gasped as I came to, disoriented but lying on cool grass. The warmth of sunlight washed over me, soothing and grounding. "Mommy?" Lily's sweet voice nudged me back to reality. I blinked against the light, seeing them seated beside me, both framed by the gentle trees above. We were back in the park, in the sunlight. The shadows were gone. But a lingering weight remained in my heart. The thrill of escape was undercut by the question. Was it all just a game? Or had we truly defeated the dark? I looked around cautiously. Reality felt too quiet, too serene after everything I'd endured. I wondered if the shadows were still lurking, watching for a moment of weakness to pull us back in. I caught Sam's eye as he gathered a handful of grass and let it drift through his fingers, a carefree motion that felt strangely out of place. As I basked in the sun, that sense of foreboding nagged at me. There were still questions unanswered, lingering doubts that curled around my mind. The allure of play and the darkness intertwining like smoke. "We're home, right?" I finally asked, tracing my fingers through the grass, desperately trying to hold on to this peace. They nodded, but there was uncertainty behind their smiles, an understanding of something that tethered them to the shadows. I sighed, unsure how to shake that feeling. "Right?" I repeated softly, searching their eyes for reassurances, but just then, I caught a glimpse of something. A flicker of shadow beneath a tree, an echo of laughter fading into the breeze. And as I held my children tight, I realized this fight may not be over. Not completely. The darkness had merely retreated, waiting for another opportunity to strike. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, if they're still out there, if those things still happen. But mostly, I try not to think about it.